Because you, that you are now, is version 2.0 or 3.0 of you. The 1.0 doesn't exist. The person that did all those things doesn't exist unless it really does still live inside you, and then you have to work on figuring out how to put that to death properly. That old you has to be buried properly. But if you know for a fact you are now a different person, so why are you still holding on to the guilt of the things you did when that person doesn't exist anymore? All right, so I'm going to start with some things that I want to make sure that we bring up. So one of the things that I always tell you guys is if you miss the zone meetings, except for this one, they're not recorded, okay? So you can't go back and watch it. And there are things that come up that are very powerful stuff that gets addressed and gets covered, and I get inspired to say something. And you might say, well, then why don't you record it? Because I want you to be inspired to make the effort to be there. Otherwise, if I just recorded it, less of you would show up. Because then you just say, I'll sleep in, or I'll go to bed early, or I won't stay up for this thing, or whatever it is. Because after all, I could just watch the recording. But there was some things that were brought up today that I wanted to bring out. So one of the things that was brought up that was very important, I guess, in the way the world is today, especially after the Torah portion, and I talked pretty strongly about wearing your seat, okay? And you can see, mine are visible right here, okay? So, the question that came up was, what if you happen to be living someplace where those that are identifiably covenanted, in this case, the world thinks of Jews, right? They're not thinking about us. And so if the Jews are under attack, which they are, almost always, but at times in more public ways than other times, and you are then thought to be one of them, you might get attacked, right? And what is a way of identifying you as them? The seat, okay? So if you know there's violence in your town, okay, and some of that may be happening, say, for example, like in London. It could be happening in other places where we see there's been a lot of uprisings and things about what's going on in the Middle East, and then, of course, sides lash out at each other, okay? Now, I'm not here taking sides. I'm not here going to get into politics. I'm talking simply about your safety. Okay, so the question that came up was, when is a decision to tuck them in or wear them, whatever it is that you're doing, a matter of courage or cowardice? When is it about that kind of a deal? And I said, look, keeping commandments, the best story that I can point to is the story of Hannah and her sons, which is from the Maccabees series, right? Okay, so if you haven't read that, you don't know. But anyway, where Hannah and her sons are basically brought to the challenge of, eat this pork or we're going to kill you, okay? And so that's where cowardice may be the issue if you eat it anyway. Okay, being threatened for not breaking, being threatened and forced to break a commandment. As opposed to wisdom saying, you know what? If I tuck these in, I'm not drawing an attack on me. So it's not cowardice, it may be wisdom. There's a difference, all right? Because you should wear them. Wisdom also says if you're working with certain types of machinery, you shouldn't be having them outside where it can get caught in a machine. Okay, some of the people, you have jobs in factories and other places where the equipment you use, you are not to wear anything that hangs from your clothing. That could get caught in the machinery. That could be very dangerous, all right? You can get pulled into the machine. Okay, so that wisdom would say, tuck them in. So for those of you that may be in a place, the question really was, how do you know when you're just overthinking it or just being whatever? I said, if you know there's actual danger in your area where people are actually being targeted and you are aware of that happening, then yes, might be wise to tuck them in, okay? You don't have to be, some martyr to stand up there and be like, well, I'm not gonna let anybody affect me that way. I don't think that's wisdom, okay? But just because somebody in London may be getting attacked doesn't mean that you have a problem wearing them somewhere else where nobody's getting attacked, all right? I've worn mine out in the open everywhere I've been because I haven't been anywhere where there's been a threat. If there was a threat, I would probably tuck them in. Okay, not to bring my family or anybody else into a more dangerous situation just because I'm doing that. I'm not going to take them off. Does that make any sense to anybody? okay? So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, all right? There actually has to be real danger of a threat, a real threat and danger of violence against you, all right? Physical violence, not just people mocking you and saying words, who cares about that? But that you are in danger of physical violence. That would be wisdom. And so I just want to give you that ruling that was kind of made today. Well, I've made it before, but I didn't get to say it in a zone meeting in a while. So I just wanted to kind of share that, because that may be something that really is something that might affect you. Not maybe you guys here, because we don't have that problem here in Cleveland, Tennessee. But, there are people in the world that are having that problem at any given time. And that part of the world that it happens in is not always the same part. It's just different places, different times, have different threat issues, okay? Different threat levels, all right? Okay. The counter to that, for example, would be if you lived in a place where it was illegal to keep Shabbat. Well, you should keep it, and if you get arrested, you get arrested, okay? But that's not the same thing of threatening to kill you, because you're identifiable as a Jew. It's not that you were specifically keeping a commandment and you were threatening you to break the commandment. It was just an identifier. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense for everybody. Okay, I just wanted to bring that out. Something else I wanted to bring out, because I do not see a long line of people in the chairs here. So I thought I would talk a little bit. Encouraging some of you to come up. Why are you waiting? All right, so I saw a very interesting TikTok or whatever, where I liked what I saw. A guy was making an analogy, and he had an orange in his hand, right? And he said, okay, so this is an orange. What happens if I squeeze that orange? Eventually, the juice comes out, right? So where'd that juice come from? Inside the orange, right? Okay, so when life squeezes you, you know what comes out? Something that was already in you. So if you get angry, if you get sad, you get bitter, you get jealous, when life is squeezing you, whatever comes out was in you. I said, wow, that's a good picture. Okay, all right, so you can't point the finger at somebody else because they did the squeezing. Okay, when you squeeze an orange, you're not getting apple juice. You can't blame the outside. It was still in you. All they did was provide the pressure, the squeeze. I think that's a really cool analogy. All right, so that being said, I wanted to talk a little bit about my trip, just from the point of view of some of you wondering, well, what do you do when you go on a trip and it's Shabbat? How do you handle that, okay? So, first of all, you have to plan your trip wisely to begin with, okay? Knowing what the plan is for the trip and the things you want to do and when Shabbat is. That's critical, all right? So my wife and I, we like to go on cruises for vacation, okay? And so cruise ships spend some time at sea and some time in ports of call. So you want to plan a trip where you're not at a port of call on Shabbat, because that's when you're going to want to go out to the port of call and see the sights and do the shopping and do all the other things. Our trip had us at sea on Shabbat. Okay, that was what we look for, so that we don't have anything to, be thinking, oh man, I would have liked to have gone and seen whatever at that port of call. Okay, because one of the reasons you go to ports of call is to go to the ports of call. That's why you go on these cruise ships, right? We went to Juneau, Skagway, and Victoria, British Columbia. And so we wanted to see things in those places. So we wanted a ship that was going to take us so that we're out on the ocean doing nothing on Shabbat. Okay. Also, nowadays, thanks to, and maybe you don't like them, maybe you do like them, it doesn't matter to me, but thanks to Elon Musk, we have much better internet now on the boats, because it's got the satellite from the Skylink that they're able to give you. So last time we did this and we tried to watch the Shabbat service, it was impossible. It froze up more than it streamed, okay? I mean, you know what it is when the screen just spins on you and nothing's happening? This was perfect. It streamed perfectly. I got to watch and see all you guys and enjoy that. Okay, you also have to plan, what are you going to do when you're someplace? Look, even if you're visiting family and the family's having a big whatever, get together and stuff, how do you not get pulled into that and find a way to have your own time quietly away from that? So lots of stuff still happening on the boat at sea, so you just make sure you're not involved in all the stuff that's happening there. You plan. Now, we were very blessed also because we ran into another family, so we got to spend some time with them and sit and talk, and I got to do the rabbi thing and answer a lot of questions, even from the teenagers, okay, which was kind of cool, all right? But that being said, it just takes planning so that you are keeping Shabbat, okay? And just so you know, I was identifiably wearing my tzitzit everywhere I went, and so was the other gentleman and his son, wherever they went, all right? So I run into people all the time where they wear tzitzit if they're gonna wear them, maybe just at services and that kind of a thing. But it's not a commandment to wear at services, it's a commandment to wear them, right? Okay? Ran into some people we hadn't seen in a long time, used to be part of this, not wearing tzitzit. Is what it is. It was still good to see them. We still got along real well, but all right? So just understand that you're still representing the king. You're still doing things the best you can, but plan out the trip, the vacation time, because after all, you should, I want to encourage all, you should travel. Traveling is amazing because you get to see a lot of stuff you wouldn't see otherwise, okay? To get to see parts of the world and see how things are and people are and everything else. But Shabbat still is Shabbat every week wherever you are. And so plan for that. Say, well, okay, this is what we're gonna do during that 24 hours, no matter what else what is going on, I do that when I visit family. We used to go up to New York to see my mother, my father, and stuff, and they might bring family together to do something. I said, look, we're not doing anything on Shabbat, so plan it to be after Shabbat or plan it to be on Sunday, but we're not doing that, right? And so they came to understand that very quickly. Some of you are like, but your family's Jewish. Doesn't mean they kept anything. Okay? But it didn't take them it wasn't hard for them to understand what I was saying because they were familiar with it, but it was, they just had to put that down and say, look, this is what we are doing on Shabbat.
You've often said we have three voices in our head, ours, Yahweh, and Hasatan. Does that mean Hasatan can read our mind, or is he more of observing us?
That's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. I don't know so much that he's reading your mind, but if we're talking about extra-dimensional beings, people that are not, beings that are not limited to the dimensions that we are limited to, right? Then it's possible that thoughts, because thoughts are things, and thoughts are not just stuck in your head, okay? There are those who believe that because they bear an energy signature and all this other stuff that, things like telepathy and being able to hear or understand people's thoughts is a real thing. I don't know from that, okay? It's not witchcraft that it would be actual just a way of connecting a receiver in you to receive what's going on inside the other person. And a lot of us have those kinds of receivers. We sense things in people, okay? Sometimes we sense that something's changed emotionally in them or in some other way because you have a certain sympathy, empathy sort of way of receiving that, okay? And you can walk up to somebody and say something like, are you okay? And the person's thinking, I'm not showing anything, but somebody can feel that. Okay, sometimes I know what you're thinking when you're trying to explain what your question is and you can't get the words out, but I'm able to get I don't know how I'm getting that. I don't feel like I'm reading your thoughts or anything, but I mean, communication is happening on a non-verbal level where I'm picking up on things. And we do that to people all the time. Okay, we do that all the time. Somebody starts to say something and you finish the sentence or you say, I've got that or whatever, and they haven't even asked yet, but you already knew where they were going. Okay, my wife and I have that all the time. Okay, so it's just one of those things. So that being said, at the very minimum, he's observing, okay, and sees your thoughts sees through the struggle you're having with wanting to do or not wanting to do something, how it is, and is aligning with the you preference, not the above preference. I think the way it's represented in the movies likes to make it look like he can hear your thoughts because it's like the old devil and the angel thing sitting on the shoulders like it used to be in the old movies. And the person's simply thinking, oh man, I'd like to do that. And the person, the angel's like saying, no, you really shouldn't do that. And the devil's like, oh yeah, come on, go for it, So maybe, my answer would be, Vera, maybe maybe that's the only way it could work is that he has to know what you're thinking. Otherwise, where's the influence level for him to have? Okay, so I would say the evidence points to, where's my magic 8-ball? Evidence points to yes, okay? Some of you know what I'm talking about.
The teaching from last night got me to think about forgiveness, and reminds me of another verse in Matthew 18 from 15 to 17. And the verse is this: if your brother sins against you, go and convict him between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. If he does not hear, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word might be established. And goes on to say, if he doesn't, and this is what you do afterwards. And at the end it says, and if he refuses even to hear the assembly, let him be to you like the nations and a tax collector. So my first question here is, this person, now I have to view the person as the nations or a tax collector, but still comes here, and so it's still my brother and sister. So how do I understand this? If I forgive him, but I don't know if it's a brother and sister, but I have to treat him like a nations and tax collector.
All right, so you know what? I never thought of it this way, but this section, which by the way, nobody ever does this. They're supposed to do this, but they don't. I'm not even just talking about the last part. I'm talking about just going to your brother first by yourself and then bringing witnesses. And by the way, they don't understand this verse. Let me just fix this problem before I answer your question. The witnesses, what does it say about them? Are there to establish that every word that you said to your brother was what was said. They're not there to back up your brother against you as witnesses against you. They're there to witness that you went to your brother and what you said to your brother. That's what they're there for. They're there in case when you end up going to the assembly, they can say, yep, we were there, and we saw Kat, and whoever it was, and they had this conversation, and this is what she said. That's what they're witnessing. See, you guys will go, I'm bringing 2 or 3 witnesses of the things that I'm accusing you of who are backing me up. This is not a court situation. This is 2 people having a problem, okay? And I go to you and I try to say, look, you hurt my feelings and I really didn't appreciate what you did and I'm hoping you'll apologize and we can fix this. And the person's like, no, I'm not interested, okay, and refuses whatever it is. And then you say, okay, I want to bring witnesses with me just so that it's on record that I did go to you and I did say all of this, okay, and that you did refuse. That's what the witnesses are there for, okay? Now, the assembly is also there for the same reason, to witness the whole thing, and so that everybody's now aware that when they see these 2 people, they understand this is what happened and this is how it was handled. All right, now, as far as treating them like a Gentile or of the nations or a tax collector, that kind of thing, this is the part that I don't think I've ever explained before, because it's been coming up lately a lot that people have a real hard time with boundaries, okay? With boundaries, setting boundaries with people that trespass on you. And that's really, I think, what's going on here. If this person refuses to respect your boundary, treat them like a stranger, like a nation's person, or a Gentile, or a tax collector. In other words, you create a boundary. I think that's what it's really talking about here. You had an issue, you went and brought the issue to the person. They said basically they could care less, they're not going to change anything about it, whatever it was that they did to refuse you. So create a boundary. Don't keep giving them access to keep doing it. Does that now make sense more with what he's saying here? Just treat them in this way. You don't look at your brother the same way as you look at the stranger. So why do you give them access to you like you would a brother when they're not acting like a brother? Is to treat them with more of a distance that you might, more cautiously like you might a stranger. Okay? You're going to definitely have different boundaries with the person you don't know very well that you just met versus a person you know in a long time. Does that make more sense? Okay, does that help?
So are you saying don't treat this person as a brother or sister, just treat them like a stranger?
Not a stranger like you don't know them, but treat them with the cautious distance and saying, look, you and I are not as friends like you thought we were anymore. If you're going to treat me this way, that relationship is not at this level anymore, it's now at this level. Okay, we're going to downgrade the relationship. Now maybe I'll say Shabbat Shalom, and that's about as good as it's going to get. Okay?
Okay.
I'm going to be polite. I'm going to be respectful. We're not friends.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. And the next question, more like clarification. So the following verse 21 to 22, that you should forgive the person 70 times 7. So talking about forgiveness, and in conjunction with this earlier question, the 15 to 17, do you do like forgiving 70 times before going to the assembly?
All right, so now we're confusing the restoration reconciliation with forgiveness.
I mean, after forgiveness, if I...
All right, so look, forgiveness is required unlimitedly. Okay, there's no limit to how many times you need to forgive. Forgiveness is something that you do in your heart, and you release the negative feelings and the negative stuff that was built up about whatever happened, okay? Now, we don't necessarily reconcile or restore with that person if they haven't apologized properly or made restoration or made an effort to reconcile whatever it was that the issue was in the first place. Clearly, the first situation you brought up is the person's refusing to do all that. They're not being repentful about it. They're not owning it. They're not sorry about it. They're refusing. Well, for that person, I still forgive them because I can't. Remember, forgiveness is for you, not for them. Okay? Forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for you, because if you don't, it will eat you up. It becomes that root of bitterness. Forgiveness is for you. Okay? Now, it's required, as far as for them, it's a part of reconciliation and restoration if that's where you want to go. Then them knowing you forgave them may be important, okay? But you do it initially because you need to for you, for your psycho-emotional health. You have to let go of the drama, trauma, pain, whatever it was that is connected to whatever just happened. The bitterness, the anger, the whatever, okay? The disrespect you felt or whatever. You have to let all that go. You can't walk around with all that because you know what? It's going to happen so many times for so many different people. How do you hold all that? No wonder you're all upset, depressed, frustrated, all these other, or running around angry all the time because you never let any of it go. So it will eat you up. Okay? So when we're talking about this forgiveness part, you say, well, how many times do I forgive? Okay, now it has to do with also the restoration, reconciliation. How often do you reconcile or restore? Well, it really depends on how genuinely you really believe they're going to make a shot at it and do what it is. Or you might just say, you know what, I think we burnt that bridge too many times. Okay? I've opened that door too many times. I'm not mad at you. I forgive you. I'm not going to put myself back in that position. You could decide that after one time. You could decide that after 5 times. Okay? But you're always going to forgive. And go back to the forgiveness teaching if you're confused.
So my question is, the first Shabbat that Elder Billy was teaching, the issue came up of when we are beleaguered by evil things happening to us, just one after the other, wham, 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 we're just really getting slapped around. And the concept came up of really taking authority over the evil one to stop that, and how that had actually worked for him and others. Coming from a very charismatic background, I've had to ponder that because I used to be, I used to wear a cape and fly when it came to using the name of JC against the enemy. Oh boy, and getting people in agreement with me, and just whatever we saw that wasn't right, we were just in the name of, we were just going at it. So when I came into Torah, I gave up all that. I laid it all down, and I wondered if today might be a good time to ask you when it might be appropriate to look the enemy in the eye and just say, thus far and no further.
Okay, so And I'd have to go back and re-listen to, I was on a boat and trying to get the internet going and everything else. I'd have to go listen to that again. But and this came up again in the Zone 3 questions. Lisa brought it up. Look, when we're talking about authority, okay, you're asserting your authority to say no. Your authority, it's the same thing with boundaries with people, to say no further, okay? Because he only can do what you allow him to do. So it's not so much that you have authority to like bind him up and throw him in the pit. One has the authority to do that. But you do have the authority to say, you have no access here. I'm not listening to you, okay? And so that's a different sort of situation going on, okay? It's you recognizing your authority to say no, to set boundaries, to assert where your alignment is. I'm aligned this way. You have no authority here, okay, type of thing, okay? It's more about convincing yourself than convincing him, okay? So you're asserting your authority that you have to say no further, to say no more, that kind of a thing, all right? But I would be hard-pressed to have any of you prove to me what issues you have that are actually him and what issues are not, because I don't think we really know. I think we get too free back in the Christian sort of mindset to think everything bad is the enemy. It's from that sort of a place, and that's not true. Okay? A lot of the stuff that comes through, he's causing it to whatever he's doing. He says he's going to bring some of that evil. Remember the evil teaching, all right? A lot of it is just, most of it is our human ability to cause our own problems, all right? Which, the adversary will take full advantage of, thinking, well, this is easy. We got all these ready available things that are already happening. So I think and again, I don't remember what Elder said with it, so I'd have to go back. But the thing is, the idea of asserting authority, okay, the example came up and somebody asked me about how I talked about one time I was talking to somebody who was hearing voices, okay? And I kind of lost my temper with it because I just was so tired of it, watching this guy be tormented and claiming his voices are doing this, that, and the other things. So we're on the phone and I just basically lost my temper, cursed out the voices, told them to shut the bleep up and get away from him. Whatever it was I said, not proud of all that. I'm just being honest with you. And I was angry. I was like, enough already, okay? But that's the kind of thing that you might need to get to, is the point where you say, you know what, enough already. You have no authority in my life. Go away. All right? And those voices stopped. Now, bear in mind, I wasn't asked to do that. All right? I just took it upon myself and did that. I don't know how long it lasted. If it lasted, because it didn't last forever, but it lasted for a while. I don't know if it's just something that was going on in his head and he just shut it off or whatever it was, but it had the result. But it wasn't something that someone asked me to cast out anything. Someone asked me to do anything. I just was tired of hearing it, okay? And I was like, and he was not wanting me to do it. He's like, please don't do that. They're going to be worse. They're going to really punish me for this. And they didn't. But it was my authority to say, knock it off. Okay? And I didn't do it in some very formal, ritualistic way in the name of this and that. I just basically said, look, knock it off. Now, of course, I may have had some authority being his rabbi. And so that's coming from a person with authority. I mean, you see this with the apostles, you see this in other places where there are people with authority given to do things at certain times, okay? But I haven't created any miraculous healings on anybody or done any of these other things. I mean, I don't have those particular talents or gifts. I don't think he's doing a whole lot of that right now anyway, okay? Those signs and wonders had a purpose, and when they happen, they always have a purpose. And they had a purpose when I was dealing with this gentleman, when I was first dealing with this thing that was happening with him. But as far as your own lives, I don't have any reservation to tell you. You have authority to say, enough, knock it off. I'm not here to be played with and messed with. I'm not here to be your little, giggle toy because you knock me around and laugh at me when I get all knocked around, okay? I'm not here for your entertainment pleasure. Enough. I belong to him. Okay, you're trespassing. You have no business here. That's, we do that during atonement, I think. One of the ones where we read a couple of sections, and basically the idea of understanding that you have authority, that is how you cast out and deal with things, is you simply say, look, I belong to him. You're trespassing. The owner's not going to be very happy with you if you don't listen. But until you actually state that you recognize that is trespassing, that you actually are bought and paid for, he's still going to do whatever he's going to do, because he says, it's like you don't have the no trespass sign out. Until you put it out, okay? He's like, well, you haven't put it out. I can do what I want. Does that make sense? Did that answer it a little bit?
Yes, I see that in terms of what's going on internally, and sometimes my own habit has, since I gave up, yelling at the enemy as a Christian, my own thing is just for that, Hasatan, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and just praise Yahweh. And I know you don't like that, so I'm just going to do it until you leave. But I guess my question has to do more with things that are not in our control, things that you've told us. Emunah is believing that everything that happens to you,
caused or allowed.
is caused or allowed by Yahweh. So I think what was coming up in Elder's message was basically a series of external calamities outside of our control. I know, I've recently launched into something that I've just been amazed at how many things externally started not working or breaking or being sick or, just all kinds of things. And I just had to keep praising him through it and learning and I think through all of that, I've learned some things about myself, and I've learned to be appropriately slow down a little bit, due to age and whatever. But I don't think I would, no matter what's happening, maybe I have 6 car accidents in a month, And so what's going on here? I feel like I would have to ask Yahweh, what are you saying, rather than, Satan, I rebuke you,
Yeah, I like I said, that was probably the only time I've ever done that. I never did it in my life.
Okay.
Because I never was raised, if you're raised in Judaism, you're not raised with this whole idea of an outside enemy causing all your problems, okay? And so I never default to thinking there's some sort of outside thing causing the problems. Things are just happening. They could be caused by me. They could be time and chance. They could be even caused by an enemy, I suppose. But it never occurs to me to think that way. I'm mostly thinking, I first want to see if it's me so I can stop doing whatever's causing the problem. And then if I can't find it being me, excuse me, if I can't see anything that proves that it's me in any way, I just accept that sometimes stuff just happens, okay? And sometimes it happens several things in a row all at the same time, more often than not. All of us have experienced that. So again, I've always taught this. This is important for all of you who are relatively new, haven't heard me teach this particular thing, all right? The Father, in his brilliance, understanding how not so brilliant we are, okay, is not going to be doing something to get your attention that you can't figure out what it is that he's trying to get your attention about, okay? So if you can't reasonably quickly and easily connect the dots, it's not him. Because somebody will be like, oh, that happened because I did this, or that happened. Really? Or no, I'm sorry, not that. That. If you know it's because of something, that's one thing. Let's say things are happening going, oh, I must be doing something wrong. Well, if you can't figure it out, then he might not be him trying to get your attention about something. Because you should be able to, in your honesty in yourself, go, yeah, this thing I've been kind of slipping over here or doing a little of this I shouldn't have been doing, whatever, and say, maybe that's it. Well, maybe that's it. Maybe if I fix this, that might be the thing, if it's him. Now, if you fix it and nothing changes, it's because it wasn't him anyway. It's just time and chance and whatever it is that's going on. But don't be so quick always to say, Satan's doing this. I went through the whole Satan teaching, the adversary teaching. I went through the whole evil teaching. We have to break free of this, okay? He can't just do whatever he wants to do. I've taught you that. Nobody else teaches that. So what? I've taught you that. Either you believe it or you don't. All right? And so, when stuff is not working in my life, my first thing is to try to figure out why it's not working. Is it something I'm doing is the first choice? This is my life. So the most likely culprit in this whole thing is me, okay? And that's the first thing I'm looking at. Now, I may realize, what? I broke a commandment here or there, and then all of a sudden this other thing happens. By the way, just like a good parent punishes a child very quickly within the range of time of when the thing that they did happened, right? Because let's say a child goes and grabs a cookie, you told them not to get a cookie. And this happens at 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. You're not punishing the child for that next Thursday. They can't connect the dots to the action, right? The thing they did to the punishment. There has to be a very quick correlation. So if you did something and then something's wrong going on in your life like a week and a half later, it probably wasn't that thing unless you're still doing it. Do you understand what I mean? He's going to get your attention about it much more quickly so that you know that's the thing that he's getting your attention about. Because otherwise, you go to punish the child, what are you punishing me for? Well, because remember last week when you did this thing? It's like, kid doesn't remember yesterday or the 5 minutes ago. And so there's no connecting. We're the same, even though we're adults. There has to be a more immediate connection. So if you can't find something reasonably close in time to what you're going through, then he's not punishing you. Okay? Does that make any sense? All right? It's more likely it's just something that happened. Now, of course, you keep doing this thing you shouldn't do, he will do something to get your attention. So that's where he may allow more things to happen, and then you might say, you know what? Some of this stuff is not punishment, he's just allowing. He might have intervened in the past, but now he's not going to intervene. He's going to allow certain things to happen because I'm not behaving right and following him right. Then it doesn't need to be as direct a correlation. It's where you start to examine and say, I wonder if this string of stuff is happening because I've slacked off somewhere. And now he's not punishing you, but he's allowing some things to happen. Okay? Just think of it that way. Did that help?
Yeah, that's great, Rabbi, and I so appreciate all these years of being led out of all that deception by your teaching and your counsel to the point where I appreciate being in a place of rest where I just say, you know what, Hasatan is not worth my attention.
That's right.
He's just not worth
right.
my attention.
That's
my
right.
attention goes on him.
But also, since you can't really know, is my opinion, you can't really know when Hasatan is doing something. You can't. There's so many other choices of what it could be. Why default to blaming, trying to bind, trying to put a boundary? Why immediately go to that when that's probably the least likely thing? Of all the possibilities, I promise you that's the least likely. Now, Christianity tells you it's the most likely, okay? Because everything adverse is his fault. But I'm telling you that's the least likely. So why default to that? Now, I don't have a problem with you saying something along the lines, look, if you're involved in here, you need to get out of it because this has nothing to do with you. So I said it, good, I've said my piece. Now I need to really focus on what probably really is the problem, which is probably you, okay? Or just naturally, sometimes things happen and they happen in clumps, like 3 or 4 things at a time. That just seems to be the way Abba allows it. And I think he allows it because it really challenges us more. You know, if you get something once every several months, okay, so in a year, let's say you get 4 of them every 3 or 4 months. All right, so you handle them pretty good. What if you got 4 of them in the same month and nothing for the other, 11 months? That may challenge you a little bit more, okay? And so just kind of keep that in mind. It's really about him seeing what you've got going on, and it's not about binding an enemy, okay?
Amen. And I just want to also add, you've taught us how the promises given to Abraham, the promises in the covenant that we have sworn to keep and pledged to keep, include a lot of guarding us, watching over us, surrounding us. The messenger of Yahweh is around the people, the tents of the righteous, and David's Psalms are full of it. And you've showed us that even though we're in the dispersion, we're not in the land where those promises would be in full effect, we see enough of his protection to know that he's really watching.
Correct. And you know what? Who knows how challenging life would be if you didn't have that? You think, well, maybe his protection isn't there because I'm having these challenges. Well, what if they weren't there? Okay, you're just looking through the perspective that you have right this minute, but potentially it could be a whole lot worse if those protections were not in place. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind.
Okay, so something was presented or came across my path, and it was by a Christian, so I was like, oh, that's interesting. But they said one thing that I thought, I was hoping you could de-Christian. When they were getting all excited about the book of Ruth and how it wasn't just a love story, it had the whole this thing, connection to the whole kinsman redeemer, and they were all excited. And then the one piece they said that I don't remember ever hearing before was they connected that to Yeshua coming in the flesh, being born of one of the tribes, and then acting in the place of kinsman redeemer. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard all of those things. I mean, Yeshua, the whole idea of fixing the whole divorcing Israel thing so that there had to be the death of the husband to have a new covenant. There's all the kinsman redeemer thing. These are all theories that people put forth when they read scripture and try to come up with whatever they come up with. Could it have any sense at all? Maybe, I don't know. I never gave it enough thought to give it that much credence to be the thing. The son came and did what he did because that's what he needed to do. That was part of the plan. Did it have to do with anything to do with marriage covenants broken and marrying the bride at the end? Maybe. Did it have anything to do with kinsman redeemer? Maybe. Okay? I don't have a problem with your guesses. Okay? As long as those guesses don't get in the way with what it actually says. I mean, these are reasonable guesses, but I wouldn't teach them as fact.
I have a question after watching Chosen again, and I wrote it down so hopefully it makes sense. But Rabbi, during the last meal, Yeshua knew who would betray him, and Judah knew that he was the betrayer. I've always found it fascinating since then that both men were sitting at the table, both aware of what was happening on some level. What can we learn from the fact that Yeshua still shared the meal with Judas, and that Judas remained there despite knowing what he was planning to do?
Two very different perspectives, right? Because you have the perspective through him, and you have the perspective from Yeshua. Okay? The perspective from Yeshua is he knew this had to happen. He knew he was going to be betrayed. He knew he was going to be arrested and the whole thing. He knew what was coming. And he was telling them that for a good period of time before he actually got there. Hey, look, we're going to go to Jerusalem and this is all going to happen. And they kind of ignored what he said. He said, oh, Master, be kind to yourself. Don't say these things and all stuff like that, right? So they just weren't buying into it. On the other hand, so then you have Yeshua going through what he already knew he had to go through. There was no reason not to go through it because he wasn't going to interfere with what needed to happen. Then you have Judas. Judas, on the other hand, instead of accepting, as Yeshua did, what needed to happen, Judas couldn't see any other way to handle this. Judas thought this was the only way to handle this because he felt betrayed. This is what we're, again, guessing. It doesn't say that in anywhere. Everybody's all like, well, Judas was all upset because Yeshua didn't do this, this, and this. We don't have that. We have movies that show that. We don't have verses that say that. Okay? But we can guess motivators for why he might do something like this. And I agree with the most logical, likely motivator is that Yeshua didn't come and be the Messiah he thought he should be. Okay? Which they show a lot of that in The Chosen, where he's like, Master, now's the time, you got to do it now, and all these things. And he's like, you're not listening. That's not the way this works. Okay? And so, I think when I watched The Chosen, I didn't see the whole thing, but the parts that I watched, I found really interesting at first, and I thought it was a little absurd. But then I realized this is people. This is how people really are. How many times, if you watch the show, how many times do you see the disciples arguing with every decision he made? And I'm sitting there going, if you know who he is, why are you arguing and trying to convince him to do something different and do this other thing instead of just following his leadership? That's us, though. That is us. But everything he goes to do is like, well, why is he doing this? Why are you doing that? Well, no, you should be doing this. Now you should be doing this. Today's the day you should do that. And he looks at him like, I'm in charge. You're following me. And I think he looks down at us sometimes like, I'm in charge. You're following me. Stop this. So I think whatever the motivator was, Judas did it anyway, even with all that awkwardness that was going on, because he had already committed to that path. He didn't see any other way to make this work, okay? He believed that, whatever, okay, I can make anything up I can make up. Maybe he believed that Yeshua presenting himself and people seeing him, more than he presented himself, as this leader figure that people were looking at as the king of the Jews and all these things. He never claimed all that, but they were claiming that Rome was going to come slamming down on them if he didn't ignite the fire of rebellion that Judas thought was supposed to happen with the Messiah, okay? And so, in his feeling maybe betrayed, again, we're guessing all this stuff, he felt like the only way out of this is to get rid of this imposter Messiah so that we don't get slammed by Rome waiting for the one that really is the Messiah. He didn't get it, all right? But he committed to a path. Why? It doesn't say. Lots of people have guessed, and I don't like when people guess. That's not the words. I don't like when they present their guesses as if they're the facts. But this has been said by so many preachers for so many, literally thousands of years now, that people just assume, well, Judas this and Judas that, but it doesn't say any of that, okay? We have not a single verse that says he was all disappointed that Messiah didn't do this, that, or the other thing. We have people digging, into their own logic, going, what would motivate him to be this way? Okay? And they come up with that. And then, I'm not saying they're wrong. They could possibly be right. But let's not teach, preach, and go about, speculation as fact. Okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, and with that though, and the chosen may be wrong in this, and please correct me so I don't keep the wrong information in my head, but when he was sitting down with the Roman guy and he was offered money to turn him in, it looked like at one point he was going to be like, no, never mind, I don't want to do it. And he's like, well, then it's going to be your head. And
right, none of which we actually have exactly that way.
It's not? Okay.
No, I mean, we do have that he gets exchanged and he gets paid for the deal. Okay. But the conversations don't play out the way you see it in The Chosen necessarily. Okay.
Well, that then maybe it doesn't go into my next question, because I was wondering if Judas were to repent, how may have this turned out differently? Because obviously Yeshua knew that was the path that needed to...
Why are we going into the speculation?
Because okay. Yeah, there's not a really good question. Okay, sorry.
I mean, look, I don't mind questions, and I really don't mind speculation either. It's just that it doesn't really have a lot of fruit to go, because you're speculating, so then you want me to speculate on an answer. Now we got double speculation going on, and it just doesn't really add up to anything that useful.
I think it's just because I saw a connection from my past, and I was just trying to figure.
Okay, let me answer that. That's easy.
Okay.
All right? It doesn't matter anything you did if you repent. Okay? If you repent. Now, Judas may have gotten to that place, but he killed himself instead of doing the proper thing with repentance. He couldn't live with what he had done. Okay? So, where does that put him with him? Not my job. Above my pay grade, no idea. Okay? And so, let's not speculate on where people end up and how the Father handles that. Only he knows what was really going on inside of that man. Okay? Now, whatever has been in your past, in your life, any of you, if you're here now, living this life now, and repented of that life then, that life no longer is a part of what he thinks of being you. It's still a part of you as you think of you, because it still haunts you and still is there, whatever it does, messing up in your brain, because the memories are all there. But he's already let it all go. He's dealing with the you are right now. Okay? The you are right now. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and the point being, of course, the you are right now would never do those things. Okay, anything that you did that was wrong, sin, whatever it was in the past, that person should have been buried in your mikvah. That person literally no longer exists. That's the new man, so to speak. Because you, that you are now, is version 2.0 or 3.0 of you, okay? The 1.0 doesn't exist. The person that did all those things doesn't exist unless it really does still live inside you. And then you have to work on figuring out how to put that to death properly. That old you has to be buried properly. But if you know for a fact you are now a different person, then so why are you still holding on to the guilt of the things you did when that person doesn't exist anymore? Okay, stop feeling all this beat up guilt. Well, I don't know how he can love me because I did this, this, and this. But that wasn't you anymore. Unless you would still do it. Does that make any sense? Okay? If you've really changed and that's something you would never do, then why are you all mad at yourself? You're not that person. That person, be mad at them. Okay, they did something good, but that's not me anymore. You have to somehow really get to this place. It's very important. Where you don't hold yourself always, in this guilt and this emotional trauma, drama, wreckage over stuff that you did that you would never do again. It's not you anymore. That's important.
Yes, sir. And that's one of the things with the thing I saw with Judas is and that was what was so beautiful with what you're saying, because I recognize it's like I'm not that person anymore, and the fact that for years being here, I would go straight back to that place and just be so horrible. I mean, I can't tell you how many sessions we probably had with that.
Right.
But it's what I'm trying to say is just teshuvah and the beautiful of repentance, and what a gift that is, because I think a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to do that. That's so horrible. I have to admit that I'm wrong. I'm like, yeah, but then you get to do the right thing. So, and change course and change direction, because if I didn't change who I was and where I'm at now, I couldn't even tell you what I'd be doing, or if I'd even still be here.
Right.
So,
Right.
But thank you for everything, Rabbi.
You're so welcome.
I had a question. What is the line between being prideful and being proud of what you do? I come up with a couple of things that, I'm proud. I was proud of the work that I've done in the last couple of days, but I felt like I was being humbled down. So what is the line between being proud of what you've done, what you accomplished, and being prideful?
All right, really good question. If I ever get to that 7 deadly sins teaching, that'll obviously be part of it. But think of it this way. Being proud of something means you feel good about what you did, all right? Being prideful can manifest itself in multiple ways. One way is that I look down on people because of what I do. I think I'm better. I'm prideful about it, okay? You can get excited about an accomplishment. A child is not being prideful when they draw this drawing and they're all excited or accomplished, and they come to mom or dad and go, look what I did, look what I did, look what I did. They're so proud of themselves, okay? But when you're prideful, the main problem with it is not so much that you look down on others, is that it blinds you to the flaws. You don't receive correction because you refuse to see that you need any correction when you're being prideful, okay? When you're being arrogant, the same problem. Arrogance is not just pointing out how good you are at anything. Arrogance comes to the point where you can't receive anything else, okay? And so when you strut around, basically bragging about how great you are, that's different than just strutting around when you finally accomplish something, being so proud of yourself. I'm just so excited. I finally passed this thing. I finally accomplished this thing. And I want to tell everybody how excited I am. As opposed to saying, hey, look at me. See how great I am. And you're just a nothing. And I'm just so great. That's where the arrogance comes in. Okay? Now, it's funny. I've been called arrogant a ton of times because people will mix somebody who's strong and confident, and they'll call it arrogance, which is wrong. They just don't run into confident people very long. I mean, that should be very often, okay? Because the majority of people I run into are not very confident, okay, in their ability to do this, that, or the other thing. So there's a confidence that people might say, oh, you're all cocky. I said, no, I just know I can do this. And so I have this confidence that comes through, okay? But arrogance is going to be a confidence that is so high it blinds you to the fact that you're actually not that competent, okay? Because you start to overmeasure in your own eyes just how good you are or qualified you are or competent you are at something, okay? So that's where you might say, so with confidence, I can say, you know what, I can do that. With arrogance, I can say, get out of the way, I'm better than you, I can do that, I can do anything better than you. It's an arrogance, it's a pridefulness, it's about how great I am versus you. It's a comparative thing. Okay, prideful, arrogance is comparative. Okay? It's me comparing to you. Okay? When that kid is so excited, they finally rode the bicycle without the little training wheels. And they're running around, I finally shot the basket in. They're so small, they can't get the ball. And they're just running around so excited. They did this thing. There is nothing there that's prideful or arrogant. It's pure accomplishment, excitement. It's pride. They feel good about themselves. I did this. Okay, does that help? All right? So I would say that with prideful and arrogance, etc., these negative things, there's a level of outside comparison. When it's just me feeling good about me. Okay? Now maybe, here's the problem. You feel good about what you did and you like to talk about it a lot. Well, not everybody wants to hear it, because not only are you showing an excitement about something you did, well, maybe they don't do anything. Maybe they don't accomplish things. Maybe they don't have something to feel pride in themselves. And so that doesn't feel good, to watch somebody get all excited when you're not excited. Someone feel good about themselves and you don't feel good about yourself.
So, Rabbi, this isn't what I plan on coming up here to talk about. You and I talked about the issues I had with my recovery and all that. So we talked about that on Monday, and you gave great guidance in being able to put all that in perspective. But I do want to talk a little bit. Hannah today on Zone 3 said something in your Zone 2. Yeah. Said something today that reinforced what you and I talked about that we are often not aware of our effect on other people's lives. And you gave that guidance to Hannah. I was very helpful in that, reinforced what you and I talked about. But what I want to ask you, this is something that's always troubled me, and I just remember that it troubled me, so I came up to ask you about it.
Well, hold on. Let me help them understand. Okay, so Pete had a sort of life-threatening experience. He had heart issues and stuff, and a lot of people expressed the value he brings to them in ways that he wasn't expecting. Okay, and the point I made to him is that we affect so many people in so many powerful ways, good and bad, that we're just not aware of, And it took that situation for people to show love to him in ways he didn't expect, from people he didn't expect, because he hadn't realized the value he had brought to them, which is why they did this, to express their love for him because of that value, okay? And I told him, you need to accept all that. You've done whatever it was that caused that reaction. This is not fakeness. Like having somebody drive 4 hours and spend 45 minutes with you each way, just so that you know that I showed up to be there with you type of thing. That wasn't me. I'm just saying that a person would do that to say, look, I'm here because of the life and impact you've had on me, okay? And that could be hard to receive if you just never thought of yourself that way, okay? But yet, you should feel good to realize, wow, I've actually done more good than I thought. I've had a more powerful impact than I thought, And I think that's important for us all to realize. And some of you may think, oh, well, I don't have that kind of impact on anybody. So then start having it, okay? Be there for people, make a difference in their lives, and that would be the impact that you have. But sadly, it's like, there's always been those things that say where, like, the guy wanted to go to his own funeral so they could see who would show up, like stage a funeral just to see who would show up and what they would say. Well, you know what? Think about it. If you passed away, how many people would show up? Who would show up? What would they be saying about you? How many people would really miss you? What impact have you had? We're still talking about one being who came and died 2,000 years ago. That's a tremendous amount of impact. We're also talking about a few other guys that he impacted that are long dead, but we have their writings, and they're still impacting us in powerful ways, okay? And so, you may be one that also has a hard time receiving that.
Well, in my case, in my case, I was having a severe heart attack, and I ended up calling an ambulance, and the ambulance rushed me to urgent care at nearby hospital, where they inserted a device into me with a balloon that actually kept my heart going. And they then told two of my coworkers and my wife that if there was anything they wanted to say to me, they needed to go ahead and do that. And then they told him that, okay, now we're going to life flight him to another hospital for surgery. So I was minutes away from checking out, and I didn't know then how serious it was. And what I found out is that many other people knew that. And so people that I thought I really didn't have much of a relationship with me have come to me afterwards, and I could see that they were genuinely glad to see me on this side of the grass. And that had an impact on me, that I don't think we really realize what we mean to other people. And so that's what has rested with me, and I think it's made me redouble my efforts to do as much for other people as I can, as my talents and my personality will allow me to do. One funny thing that happened during all that, Brenda was on the way to the hospital, and she got a text message from a guy who was doing our landscaping. His name is Jesus. And Jesus it was an old message, but it popped up on her phone, said he was on his way. You get it, Jesus?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So apparently Yahweh has a sense of humor. But that event still has an impact on me, and I'm much better in coming to terms with it after counseling with you on Monday. What I wanted to ask you about is in Luke 22. And it's where he's in the Garden of Gethsemane. He says, Father, if it be your counsel, remove this cup from me, yet not my desire, but let yours be done. It's verse 42. And then there's a messenger that appears to him, strengthening him. And then verse 44, and being in agony, he was praying more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. That has always bothered me, because it to me indicates there's a separation, that he and the Father were not one at that point. I'm wondering by the language in there where the messenger comes to strengthen him, is he giving him moral support, or is he strengthening him in the way that he was inclined to go, much like Pharaoh's heart being strengthened, and then being in agony? So I've always been bothered by that, and I'm wondering if you can also, in your answer, talk about what the cup represents.
All right, so, and again, we have these accounts. I'm not sure how many of the Gospels this is written in, but, we have these accounts, and we have to remember, we have this incredibly unusual, unique situation where you have a being that is fully human and encasing that which is fully Elohim, right? And so you're going to have these human moments. Up until these moments, he knew what was going to happen. But knowing informationally is not the same as like, now it's going to be tomorrow, okay? It's like some of you, I'm going to put this in a really light moment, okay? So back in school, you'd have a paper due. You didn't think a whole lot about it. You knew you had it due. It was not going to be due for 3 months. But the night before it was due and you hadn't done it, it became very real. Much more real than 3 months earlier. So he knew this moment was coming, but now he knows it's going to be the worst possible experience a person can have, okay? See, you didn't know you were going to have a heart attack, and in that heart attack, you didn't necessarily have somebody whipping the skin off your body with sharp, whips and cords and things. I mean, he was going to go through something horrific and painful. So, and he basically is having a human conversation with the Father saying, any other way we could do this? He wasn't having any doubt from that point of view. It's just like, I'd really rather not do it this way if it's something that we can avoid, okay? And that was a human moment. I mean, we would all have that moment, all right? Now, as far as cup, he's saying that this is my thing that I know I need to do, all right? It's my job. It's my cup, all right? It belongs to me. This is my task, okay? But we get to see a very human side to him. Now, bearing in mind, I don't understand the messenger thing. I can't tell you what that was all about or why that was all about. But do you notice that after this, when he's standing there with the court situation, with Caiaphas and the whole thing, he is not having this problem anymore. He was reconciled to and resigned to what was going to happen. Hey, I could call a legion of angels and they'd come and take care of all of this stuff, okay? But I'm not going to do that because there's a plan here, and I'm not going to undermine the plan, all right? But we're getting an insight to a private conversation that I don't find surprising. It doesn't diminish my feelings towards Yeshua. Actually, it may increase them. Because it says something in Scripture, well, in the Gospels, that or actually not even the Gospels, in the writings of the apostles, that he understood what it was like to be us. Right? That's written. But we don't see it. Where do we see him challenged? Where do we see him with a busted arm or scraped up, whatever, because he fell and everything, or somebody beat him up or some other thing? Where's his health challenges? We see none of these things that he knows what it's like. He wasn't married, didn't have any of those problems, A lot of suffering comes there. A lot of joy too, don't get me wrong, but I mean, But that being said, we get to see him actually in a human way here. He knows exactly what's coming, and he's not excited about it. He's not arguing with it. Notice how he words it. He said, if there's a way that we can do this differently, I think that'd be great, but nonetheless, if this is it, then that's what we're doing. And the Father didn't answer him that he would change anything. He said, well, okay, then I guess that's what we're doing. And then straight ahead, that's where he was going to go, okay? So in some ways, this enhances the way I feel about him, because I think he does understand to some degree, as I don't have a lot of examples. This gives me an example that he understands what it's like to be us, okay? And that human experience side of him was what got to have that conversation.
Okay, so your answer to Wayne sparked another question. And I may be, or I think I'm somehow misconnecting things you've said, or connecting them in ways they don't go. So please help me unscramble. You've told stories in the past about that moment when you just got tired of not being free to be yourself, and people wouldn't accept you as you were. But then when you were talking to Wayne, you said that we have to, or maybe I interpreted into what you said, that we have to be aware of how happy we are about what we did because other people may be negatively affected by that. Where is the line of just, I want to be myself, and the maturity of knowing to suppress my strength? Like with children, we suppress our strength all the time so that we don't hurt them.
Right. Look, the bottom line is, how do we define being yourself? If myself is mature enough to rein in aspects in the right timing with the right people and to adjust to people, that's still me being myself. When I tell the story about the idea of not being allowed to be myself, it wasn't that I wasn't being myself. I was always being myself. I was tired of people judging me for being myself and telling me that I needed to change not to be myself, that I needed to constrain myself more in certain ways not to be myself. And I thought that was, like, I needed to apologize for being me. And then I decided I wasn't going to apologize anymore for being me. Now, I wasn't going to just stay saying, like, this is me, too bad. I was just like, this is me now, and this is what it is right now. It's transitioning. It's hopefully improving. It's leveling up, but this is where I am right now. But it's me also that can talk to, like, my practitioner, my doctor or somebody, in a different way that I might talk to, my wife, in a different way that I might talk to one of you, in a different way I might talk to my child, in a different way I might talk to my buddy, you understand? Because we learn that there's certain things that we adjust because of the other person's, sensibilities or whatever it is, how they might react, okay? There are people I know I need to just slow down and talk a little softer with because they can't receive this loud, fast-talking thing. So that's not me constraining me. That is a part of me, okay? It's when there are things that are me are not acceptable, period, and you want me to remove that completely. That's what I'm talking about, all right? So my constraining the amount of, loudness, excitement, whatever it is about me that I might contain a little bit or let out, kind of like the iris on a lens as you open it up more and close it, that kind of thing. That's still me and still my lens. But if you want to take that lens and just remove that whole thing away from me, that's what I'm talking about, okay? So I just think that that's really what we're talking about. And and believe it or not, it came about stupid things like people's fear of entertainment materials. Like if I wanted to read a book or watch a movie and somebody would be like, you can't read that, you can't watch that, or I can't talk about it because I saw it, Because people want to just flip out about these kind of things because that's their particular fears and judgments and whatever it is. That's more what I'm saying. It's like, you know what? I'm going to watch what I'm going to watch. So if I go to see the next Avengers movie, I'm going to be able to tell you guys, I went to see the Avengers movie, and I don't need you to be judging me because I saw an Avengers movie. Okay? And so that's kind of where that all came from, because we had some people in the congregation that judged everything. And they saw demons and devils under every book, under every movie, on everything, whatever. That was their thing, okay? And so I'm like, no, I'm not going to pretend that I don't do these things or find certain things entertaining. That's just, if you have a problem with it, that's your problem, okay? But that's the judging thing that we need to work on, right? Judge not, lest you be judged. People have a hard time with that, I read some of the Harry Potter books. You all want to run out the door now? I didn't become a warlock or a witch or whatever. Never tried to cast a spell. You know why? Because I'm mature enough to understand what's entertainment and what's real, okay? And every culture, going back as far as you can go back, has mythologies and entertainment and superheroes and bad guys and villains and all kinds of other things and magics and fantasy and other things that they came up with for entertainment. That doesn't mean some of that stuff isn't also real too in another aspect of the world, but that means a lot of it has just been always used and looked at as entertainment. Can you know the difference? Can you know the difference? That's all. If you can't, then don't do it. That's your thing, okay? But that's, to answer Sarah Beth's point, that's really where I was like, I don't need people coming over my house and they see that I had, back in the old days, a CD or a videotape, of some movie that they thought was inappropriate because it had a hero in it or something. Okay, we're not talking about anything like super inappropriate that everybody might agree with. This is just their sort of thing, that was their fears and their whatever, all right? I said, no, you're going to get me, and the guy who's in front of you is telling you all this insight about the scriptures, saw that movie or read that book. I grew up in the 80s. I played Dungeons and Dragons. I'm still the guy up here teaching you. Are we not going to allow that, certain things that are in the past or whatever it is, whatever? I mean, how does what you're getting now get affected by whatever I did in my life already? It's what you're getting now is because of who I am now, right? Some people are like, you shouldn't say those things. You know what? I'm tired of that whole nonsense. You have this is kind of like, we'll tie it into the thing that was asked here, that Pete asked. You know what? That humanizing piece, hopefully this humanizes me more. I did things you did. I did some things you wouldn't have done. You did things I wouldn't have done. Puts us all in the same boat, doesn't it? I mean, that's really what it should be. It puts us all in the same boat. And so don't think that he picked me because I led such a perfect life. No, I didn't lead one as bad as some, based on whoever's judging, you know. I certainly wasn't perfect. I was human. And I was human without Yeshua, without the Torah, without all these things. And when I got these things, I made big changes, as did you, right? So you should want somebody up here that actually lived life a little bit and has some experiences and has stuff that you're saying, I wonder if it's okay to read this or do this or whatever. Well, you can ask me. I can tell you my thoughts on it. My answer, by the way, is it depends on if it really affects you or not. Okay? Some stuff, you know, it's like Paul says sometimes, you know, things that are allowable are not always good for me. He's recognized that some things that are allowable aren't good for him. And he wasn't dealing with like GMO and additives in his food. Okay? He was dealing with life in that world. He realized there were things that he could do that he personally realized it's not good for him. Okay? So there are things that may be fine for one person, not so fine for another person. It's very subjective. Okay? What's not subjective is when he says do this or don't do this. Okay? And those things are, without question, they are what they are. Does that help at all with people? Do you respect me less now? Okay? I grew up in the same era you guys all know from my age. You know what it was like in the 70s and 80s. Okay? You know, kids today think, oh, the world is so... Listen, I'll take you back. You'll see a world. I'll take you back to the 70s. You'll see a real crazy world. Okay? First of all, they would just go into a coma without having something to touch and click. We didn't have any of those. Where are all the teenagers? They're all in the class. No cell phones, no internet. How'd you live? No video games. So exciting when they came out with Pong. For those who don't know, that was the first video games where you actually had a little rectangle paddle you could move up and down on a screen, and a little ball would go across, and if you got your paddle to hit it, it would pong to the other side, like playing ping pong. Okay? And it moved this fast. So it wasn't really challenging to get your paddle to where it needed to be. So if you missed, because it was not moving quick. I forget the monochrome, there was a monochrome green screens. Oh, it's awful, awful. Kill your eyes. It was just terrible.